My name is Margaret Claire Holloway, and I'm 65 years old this spring. I live alone now in a faded yellow house at the edge of a town that used to feel like the center of everything. These days, it's just a place with more memories than people. I sit most mornings on my back porch, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at the same oak tree that's been leaning over my fence since before I had gray hair. And every morning I ask myself the same question. Where did I go wrong? My son, Daniel, hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days, to be exact. Not since the night he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You broke me, Mom." Then he walked out. No slammed door, no suitcase, just his keys on the table and silence that settled into the walls like mold. And before you assume the worst, no, I never laid a hand on him. I didn't scream or drink or lock him out or throw things. I was never that kind of mother. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe I wasn't enough of any kind of mother. When I was younger, everyone said I was too soft. My family especially. My sisters raised their voices and their children with the same iron grip. Kids need discipline, they'd say, like love was a dish best served with a warning. I was different. I wanted to be gentle. I believed kindness could raise a child just as strong as rules. And for a while, it worked. Daniel was my shadow, my sunshine, my heart outside my body. He was quiet, thoughtful, always asking questions about the stars and the way clocks tick. He didn't need punishing, he needed understanding. But when he hit 12, everything shifted. He grew silent, not the dreamy kind of silence, but the heavy, closed-door kind. I asked what was wrong. He shrugged. I asked again. He shrugged harder. And the people around me, my sisters, my mother, even my husband John, they told me to be tougher. "Stop coddling him," they said. "He's a boy. He needs to toughen up." Life doesn't care about feelings, Margaret. And slowly I listened, not all at once. But over time, I started trading softness for steel. I stopped asking how he felt and started telling him how to act. I stopped hugging him before school, stopped asking about the dreams he used to describe with wide eyes and waving hands. I stopped seeing him. Because I was so afraid of failing him the way they said I would, I became the mother they wanted me to be. Strict, structured, strong. And somehow, that's when I began to lose him. He didn't slam doors or scream, not at first. He just got quieter. He ate in his room. He came home late. He stopped smiling with his eyes. I chalked it up to hormones, to teenage moods. But now, looking back, I know exactly when I lost him. It was the night I told him, "You need to stop being so sensitive. The world doesn't owe you comfort." He didn't cry, he didn't shout. He just looked at me like I was a stranger. And from that moment on, I think I was. You see, I thought I was saving him from weakness. I thought I was teaching him how to survive. But all I taught him was how to hide. how to stuff down his feelings like shame, how to flinch when someone got too close, how to protect himself even from the people who were supposed to love him most. And eventually, he decided to protect himself from me forever. But that's not the whole story, not even close. Because before he left, before the silence and the years and the aching gap where my son used to be, something happened. Something I still can't say out loud without trembling. It was the moment I realized I had become the kind of mother I used to swear I'd never be. And that moment almost broke him, almost broke me too. But I'll tell you the rest. Because if you're going to understand how I got here, how a mother can lose a child not to death, but to distance, you need to know the worst of it. You need to know what being hard really cost. The first time I raised my voice at Daniel, he was 13. It wasn't anything big, just a broken glass, spilled milk, something every child does 100 times before they're grown. But it had been a long day. The kind of day where every sound feels louder, every chore heavier, and every smile too far out of reach. John had just come home, already irritated because the truck needed repairs and the check engine light wouldn't stop blinking. He slammed the door, sighed like the whole world was on his back, and muttered something about no one in this damn house knowing how to take care of anything. I flinched. Then I turned and saw Daniel, barefoot in the kitchen, staring down at the shattered glass like it had betrayed him. I should have gone to him, should have knelt down and helped him pick up the pieces, should have asked if he was okay. But instead, I snapped. Are you serious right now, Daniel? Can you do anything without making a mess? The words came out too fast, too sharp. I saw him flinch, just slightly, like the blow had landed where it wasn't meant to. He looked up at me, and the thing I'll never forget wasn't fear. It was disappointment. He didn't cry, didn't apologize. He just quietly stepped back, left the mess on the floor, and walked to his room. I stood there, glass crunching under my slippers, hands shaking with something that wasn't just anger. Shame, that's what it was. It hit me all at once. How quickly I'd become the kind of parent who barked instead of listened, who threw words like stones and expected their child to understand the meaning behind the damage. But of course, he didn't. Why would he? Daniel had been raised on bedtime stories, forehead kisses, and gentle whispers when the world felt too loud. But I had changed the script, and children, they notice the rewrites long before we admit to making them. I told myself I'd apologize the next morning, that it was just one moment, that he knew I didn't mean it, but I didn't, and that became a pattern. My silence became a fence. One I thought kept danger out, but really it kept him out and me locked inside. See, the hard part about parenting isn't just protecting your children from the world, it's protecting them from the parts of you that haven't healed. And I had plenty of those. My mother was a cold woman, not cruel exactly, just emotionally absent in that way people justify by saying, well, she kept us fed. She didn't believe in hugs or comfort. She believed in work, in rules, in kids being seen and not heard. When I was little, I'd sit on the back steps watching the neighbors across the street. Their mother would sit in the grass with them, blow bubbles, clap when they danced like fools. I used to wonder what it felt like to be held for no reason at all. So I made myself a promise. My child will never feel unloved, never feel unwanted. And I kept that promise for a while. But when life started falling apart, I forgot that love without tenderness is just performance. John started drinking more when work dried up. He never laid a hand on us, but his moods could shift like weather, bright one moment, storming the next. Daniel stopped asking him questions, stopped trying to connect. And me? I thought if I could just hold the house together, the rest would follow. So I scrubbed floors and packed lunches and pinched pennies and pretended that yelling was discipline and silence was strength. When my sisters called to check in, I never mentioned the distance growing between me and my boy. Instead, I said things like, "He's becoming a man. He needs structure." They approved. Finally, they said, I was parenting the right way. But what they didn't see, what I didn't let myself see, was the way Daniel started to dim. He stopped writing in his journal, stopped asking to go to the library, stopped looking at me when he spoke. And one night, about 6 months after that first broken glass, I found him sitting in the dark on the back porch, knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide and wet. I sat beside him, trying to act casual, trying to pretend like everything wasn't unraveling. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. Then he said, without looking at me, "Do you still love me, even when you're mad?" I can't describe what that question did to me, how it cracked something deep and quiet inside. I laughed it off, pulled him into a side hug and said, "Of course I do. Don't be silly." And I thought that was enough. But now I know he wasn't asking for a hug or a laugh. He was asking for proof, and I didn't give it to him because I was too busy trying to prove myself to everyone else. Too busy trying to be a strong mother, too afraid of being called soft. But softness is what he needed most, and I'd already started to smother it in stone. Daniel was 14 when he stopped telling me about his dreams. I remember the exact moment I realized it. He was sitting at the kitchen table, notebook open, pencil tapping, eyes glazed over like he wasn't really there. For years, he'd filled pages with sketches and diagrams, little inventions, imagined machines, strange hybrid creatures he'd create, just to ask me, "Do you think this one could fly?" But that day, he tore the page out, crumpled it, tossed it, and I just watched. Didn't ask why, didn't tell him to stop, didn't even say his name. I just kept scrubbing the counter like maybe elbow grease would undo the silence growing between us. Later that night, after he went to bed, I pulled the paper out of the trash, smoothed it open with trembling fingers. It was a sketch of a boy, wings tied down by rope, mouth stitched shut. And that's when I should have gone to him. But I didn't. I folded the drawing, tucked it into my Bible, told myself I'd bring it up tomorrow. But tomorrow became next week. Next week became never. Because by then, Daniel had begun disappearing in little ways. He started locking his bedroom door, started sleeping with his earbuds in, started spending hours walking through the neighborhood alone, even when it was raining. He said it cleared his head. I told myself it was normal teen stuff. But deep down, I knew better. I knew I had opened a door I didn't know how to close. The door to hardness, to silence, to survival mode parenting. And it's easy to convince yourself you're doing the right thing when the people around you keep clapping for you. My sister Brenda, especially, she was always telling me how Daniel just needed a little more backbone. He's too sensitive, she said. He needs to toughen up. The world's not going to baby him. And for a while, I agreed. I repeated her words like gospel. Life is hard, Daniel. You've got to stop taking everything so personally. Or, that's not bullying. That's just boys being boys. Or worse, you need to learn to deal with it. But he was dealing with it, quietly, alone, in his drawings, in his posture, in his aching silences, until he couldn't anymore. The fall he turned 15, I got a call from the school. It was the vice principal. Cold voice, clinical tone. Mrs. Holloway, we need you to come down. There was an incident. My heart dropped. I imagined a fight, a suspension, something violent. But when I arrived, I was ushered into a small office where Daniel sat with his head down, arms folded so tightly it looked like he was trying to disappear inside himself. The counselor slid a piece of paper toward me. It was a poem. Daniel had turned it in for an English assignment. It read like a goodbye letter. It wasn't explicit. There were no threats, no statements about death, just a boy lost in a forest, building walls from silence and sleeping under a sky too heavy to hold. I still remember one line like it was carved into my ribs. I used to have wings, but they slowed me down, so I cut them off and learned to crawl. The counselor looked at me kindly, too kindly. We're concerned. We think Daniel might be experiencing signs of depression. My first instinct was denial. No, I said. He's just creative. He's always been like this. But even as I said it, I could hear the hollowness in my voice. Daniel didn't look up, didn't defend himself, didn't even flinch. When we got home, he went straight to his room. I sat in the car for 20 minutes, engine off, staring at the dashboard like it held some kind of answer. That night, I stood outside his door, hand raised, ready to knock. But I didn't. I went to bed instead. And the guilt? It's never gone away. Because here's what they don't tell you. You don't have to scream at your child to lose them. You don't have to beat them or abandon them or call them names. You can lose them in the pauses, in the not saying, in the not asking, in the nights you tell yourself, tomorrow I'll say something. But tomorrow never comes. And what I didn't know then, what I've only learned through aching years and an empty house, is that the hardest thing to forgive is silence. Daniel was 16 the night everything broke. It started like any other Friday. Gray skies, leftovers on the stove, a quiet house where we all pretended peace meant silence. I had just gotten home from my shift at the hospital laundry, exhausted down to the bone. My feet ached, my back throbbed. I needed stillness, and for a while, that's what I got. Until I walked past Daniel's room and heard, shouting, not loud, but urgent, angry, muffled through the walls, like he was trying to keep it from reaching me. I pressed my ear to the door. I said, "Leave me alone," he hissed. Pause. Then, "You don't get to pretend you care now. Not after everything." My stomach dropped. There was no one else in the room. He was on the phone. I should have walked away, but I stood there, frozen, listening, hating myself for doing it, but more afraid of what I might hear. "No, she's not here half the time," he said. "And when she is, it's like I'm a problem she's tired of solving." I wanted to knock. I wanted to open the door and say, "That's not true." But it was, and worse, he was right to feel it. A few seconds later, I heard him sob. A raw, gasping sound, the kind I hadn't heard from him in years. And that sound, God, that sound, it scraped something open in me I didn't know was still alive. I raised my hand to knock, but the moment passed, the silence returned, and I walked away, back to the kitchen, back to the part of the house where it was easier to pretend. I stood over the sink, hands shaking, heart hollow, until I heard the front door open and then close. I turned just in time to see him walking down the driveway, backpack slung over his shoulder, hood up, disappearing into the night. He didn't come back until almost midnight. I was sitting on the couch, TV on mute, praying I wouldn't hear sirens. When he finally walked in, soaked from the rain, eyes red-rimmed and wild, I stood up too fast. "Where have you been?" I demanded. He didn't answer, just tossed his bag on the floor and started up the stairs. I followed. "Daniel, stop," he paused, halfway up, back still to me. "I'm talking to you." He turned slowly, and I swear, I'll never forget the look on his face. It wasn't anger, it wasn't rebellion, it was grief, like something inside him had died, and I was the one who'd killed it. "I don't want to fight with you," he said, voice low. "Then talk to me," I snapped. "You've been shutting me out for months. I'm doing my best, Daniel." And that's when it happened. He looked at me, tears fresh, voice breaking, and said the words that haunt me still. "Your best is what broke me." I stood there, stunned, like the air had been sucked out of the room. He didn't wait for a response, just walked up the stairs, closed his door, quietly, always quietly, and I sat on the steps, cold and wet from the open door, holding those words like they were knives. "Your best is what broke me." It would be easy to defend myself, to say I never abused him, never abandoned him, that I worked, that I stayed, that I sacrificed. But none of that matters when what you offer isn't what they need. And what Daniel needed wasn't strength. It was softness, the kind I buried to make other people comfortable, the kind I denied him because I thought love meant building armor, not shelter. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until the sky turned pink, holding his drawing from years earlier, the boy with wings tied down, and crying so quietly, even the walls didn't hear me. I realized I didn't know my son anymore. But worse, I wasn't sure he'd ever known me. The days after that were hollow, not explosive, not dramatic, just empty. Daniel didn't yell, didn't lash out. He just pulled away. It was the kind of leaving you don't see at first. The quiet kind, like watching a boat slip from its dock in the fog. You don't notice until it's already too far to swim after. He still came home every night, ate what I cooked, showered, slept. But he stopped speaking to me unless it was necessary. One-word answers, shrugs, eyes that wouldn't meet mine. I tried to talk. I really did. Want to help me make dinner tonight? No. Want to watch that old space movie you used to love? I've got homework. I miss you, you know. Silence. Sometimes I thought I saw something in his face, a flicker of the boy who used to crawl into my lap and whisper questions about stars and dinosaurs and death. But it always disappeared before I could reach it. And then came the day I found the journal. It was shoved under his mattress, half open, the pages curled like they'd been turned too many times. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. And I would lie if I said I've ever fully forgiven myself for how I read it. Not like a mother desperate to understand, but like a frightened woman hunting for evidence that she hadn't completely failed. The words on the page gutted me. She used to make me feel safe. Now she makes me feel small. I don't think I was meant to be this sad all the time. I want to scream, but there's no point. She doesn't hear me. Page after page. Despair carved in ink and tucked in the back, folded between two sheets, was a letter addressed to no one. It began with, "If something happens to me, it's not her fault." Not really. I dropped it, like it burned, because in that moment, every denial I'd clung to shattered. He was hurting, not just moody, not just distant, hurting, drowning. And I'd missed it. No, worse, I'd dismissed it. I wanted to rush to him, to say, "I read your words, and I'm sorry, and I see you now. I see all of it." But I didn't. I tucked the journal back where I found it, closed his door, and then I sat in the laundry room and cried into a basket of unfolded towels like it would somehow cleanse me of what I'd become. That evening, he came downstairs and asked if he could go to the bookstore with a friend. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you want a ride?" He looked confused, almost suspicious. "No, it's fine. We're walking." He left without saying goodbye, and I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of untouched tea and the echo of his journal ringing in my head. She doesn't hear me, but I did now. Too late, maybe, but I heard him. That night, I wrote him a letter, not like the kind you fold into a lunchbox, a real letter. Long, honest, raw. I told him I was sorry, that I'd let the wrong voices shape the way I mothered him, that I had tried so hard not to fail him that I'd forgotten to see him. I wrote, "You didn't do anything wrong. You were never too soft. I just didn't know how to hold that softness without smothering it. I left it on his pillow. The next morning, the letter was gone. No mention of it, no thank you, no anger, just gone. And in its place, nothing, which somehow hurt worse. A week later, I came home from work and found the house too quiet. Daniel's room was clean, bed made, journal gone, and a note on the table in his perfect slanted handwriting. It read, "I'm not okay, Mom, and I don't think I can be okay here. Please don't come looking. I need to figure out who I am without trying to be who you want." There was no "I love you," no "I'll be in touch," just space. Space where my child used to be. And all I could do was sit down on the floor, knees to my chest, and cry into the silence I had helped build. Not with cruelty, but with fear, with all the things I never said, with all the tenderness I never gave. And that's when I finally understood what it meant to be strong the wrong way. It's not about surviving. It's about who survives with you. And I was alone. The first night after Daniel left, I didn't sleep. I just sat in his room. The walls were still lined with posters he hadn't taken down. A model spaceship he'd never finished sat crooked on the desk. His pillow still smelled like the shampoo he never remembered to put the cap back on. I kept thinking he didn't take much, just a backpack, a duffel bag, a few books, but he took the air with him, the gravity, the sound. I wandered the house like a ghost. Every room felt like an accusation. Every corner whispered, "You waited too long." I kept checking my phone even though he'd turned it off. I checked my email, my mailbox, the front porch. Every sound outside made me jump. I imagined him coming home in the middle of the night, exhausted, changed, ready to forgive me. But that didn't happen. Days passed, then weeks. I called my sister Brenda, voice shaking, and told her everything about the journal, the letter, the note. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Maybe you should have been harder on him from the start." That's when I realized she still didn't get it, and maybe she never would, because this wasn't about discipline or rules or kids these days. It was about presence, and I had been present in all the wrong ways. In the grocery store when I passed his favorite cereal. At red lights, staring through the windshield like maybe he'd be crossing the street on the other side. At home, folding his clothes, I should have packed away but couldn't bear to. Everywhere, and through those tears, I began to understand something I'd never wanted to admit before. I wasn't just grieving him. I was grieving the mother I wanted to be, the one I thought I was becoming, the one I used to imagine when he was a baby sleeping on my chest, his tiny breath warming my collarbone. But that mother, she disappeared somewhere between survival and shame. She got buried under bills and cold advice and the desperate need to prove that I could be strong in a world that never gave softness a chance. I started going to therapy about Daniel, about my sisters, about my mother's cold hands and colder silence, about the fear that had built a home in my chest and called itself parenting. Camille asked me one question that shattered me. When did you learn that love had to hurt to be real? I couldn't answer. But the moment she said it, I felt something shift, like a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. My whole life had finally named itself. That question echoed for weeks, because the truth was, I had believed that love meant sacrifice, meant swallowing pain so your children didn't have to, meant putting yourself last always, without question. But I never realized that sometimes what we call sacrifice is just silence in disguise. And silence doesn't protect our children. It teaches them that pain should be endured, not expressed, that feelings are burdens, not bridges. And God forgive me, I taught Daniel that too well. It's been 4 years now, 4 birthdays, 4 winters where I didn't know if he had a coat, 4 summers wondering if the sun still touched his face the same way. I haven't heard a word from Daniel, no calls, no letters, no smoke signals, just silence. But it's a different silence now, not the kind I used to keep tucked in my chest like armor. This one is honest. It admits what I used to deny, that I failed him, not with cruelty, not with fists, but with neglect of the soul. There's not a day that passes when I don't wish I could go back to that moment on the stairs when he said, "Your best is what broke me." I wish I'd said, "Then I'll find a new best, and I'll do it with you." But I didn't, and I can't go back. So now I write. Every Sunday, I sit at the same kitchen table where he used to do his homework, and I write Daniel a letter. I don't send them. I wouldn't know where to. I just write. Sometimes about memories, when he first learned to ride a bike, when he cried after watching that sad space movie, when he dressed as a robot and asked strangers if they knew where he plugged in. Sometimes I write apologies. Other times, I write updates about the tomato plant I finally kept alive, about therapy, about how I've started to cry with people instead of behind them. And in every letter, I end with the same line. If you're out there, I hope you're learning how to be whole without having to harden first. That's the thing I never learned until it was too late. Strength isn't how long you can go without breaking. It's how gently you can hold what's already broken. That's what I try to do now, with myself, with others, with what little I have left. And believe it or not, the world started to feel softer after I stopped trying to earn its approval. Brenda still doesn't understand. She says I'm dwelling, that I did my best and should move on. But I think that's the luxury of people who've never had to mourn the living. I don't need Daniel to forgive me to make peace with what happened. I just need to know that I finally became the person he needed, even if it's too late for him to see it. Still, sometimes the universe sends a flicker of something. Grace, maybe. Last fall, I went to the bookstore for the first time in years. I wasn't even sure why. Habit, boredom, maybe just a need to be near pages. I wandered through the aisles until something caught my eye. A thin paperback with a blue cover, the title, Wings Without Ropes. I opened it and froze. It was a poetry collection by D. Holloway. I turned to the first page and read the dedication. For the ones who cut their wings to survive, and the ones who never knew how to ask them not to. I didn't cry in the store, but I held that book like it was breathing. Every poem felt like an echo, not just of him, of me too. It wasn't a reunion, not a phone call, not even a sign meant for me, but it was something, a voice, still alive, still writing, still searching, and for now, that's enough. Because sometimes love is letting someone go without slamming every door behind them. Sometimes love is waiting with the porch light on, even when you know they might never come back. And sometimes love is learning how to forgive yourself, not because you deserve it, but because healing has to start somewhere. I still write the letters, not every Sunday anymore, but often enough that the drawer beside the stove is full of them, folded, dated, some tear-stained, some hopeful, some angry. Healing isn't a straight road. There are days I feel whole, grounded, and then there are days when I smell his old shampoo in someone else's hair and have to sit down before my knees give out. But I no longer chase the past like it holds my worth. Because what I've learned, what cost me more than I'll ever be able to explain, is this. You can't mother from a place of fear. You can't love someone into resilience by denying them the right to feel weak. You can't force a child to thrive in a house where they were taught to survive. I used to think being a good mother meant sacrifice. Now I believe it means presence. It means asking the hard questions, even if you're scared of the answers. It means saying, "I'm sorry," before it's too late, and sometimes even after. It means sitting with someone's pain without trying to fix it, just so you'll feel better. Aaron, my nephew, comes by sometimes. He's 23 now, just had a little girl with his girlfriend, and I see the nervousness in his shoulders when he holds her, like he's afraid of becoming his father, or mine, or me. He asked me once, "What if I mess her up?" I laughed. Then I told him the only honest thing I could say. You will, we all do. But it's not about being perfect. It's about noticing when you've hurt them and showing up anyway, over and over, softly. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "I hope she always knows I see her." And I thought, maybe that's it. Maybe the most radical thing we can do, especially those of us who were raised on silence and shame, is to simply see the ones we love, truly, without conditions. A few weeks ago, I got a postcard. No name, no return address, just a watercolor print of a field and a single line scrawled across the back in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Still learning how to fly. That's all it said. But I knew it was Daniel. And in that moment, I didn't cry. I smiled, because he didn't owe me that, and still, he gave it. It wasn't a reunion, it wasn't redemption, but it was enough. Enough to know he's still out there, still alive, still becoming. And maybe, just maybe, healing in his own way. These days the house is quiet, but not like before. Now it's a soft quiet, the kind that doesn't ache. I've planted lavender out front. I open the windows when it rains. I read books I never used to make time for. I listen to music without lyrics, And every morning I light a candle next to the drawer where the letters live. Not out of guilt, not out of mourning, but out of love. For the boy I raised, for the woman I became, for the space between us that still breathes, even if we're not ready to fill it yet. I don't call myself strong anymore. That word never fit right. But I've learned how to be honest. And maybe, just maybe, that's stronger than anything else.